welcome back to the 12th Man podcast, and it's going to be the final podcast of the 24-25 season. It's been an unbelievable season for many different reasons, but we'll discuss most of those tonight before we come off. Of course, we're going to start with a big breaking news in the last hour that Ange Postecoglou has been sacked from his job at Spurs despite winning the Europa League. We'll be looking back at the final day of the Premier League season, where Chelsea and Newcastle secured Champions League football. Villa missed out. Does that leave them vulnerable? Rumours that a lot of clubs are looking at Morgan Rogers, who you'll be interested to see if he makes our team of the season later on tonight. But transfer news is going crazy as well. Liverpool seem to be the busiest at the moment. Very close. They signed one player, very close to signing two more. We'll look at those players later on as well. And I mean, we've been putting this podcast off about one that just hasn't really worked out for us. But we agreed on Wednesday we were going to do it today at 6 o'clock. And of course, it was basically all going to be about the end of the season review. We probably would have discussed whether Ange will stay or go. It was very much 50-50 up until about 4:30 today when it looked inevitable that he was going to be sacked. And then that announcement came at 5 o'clock that he had gone. And that's where we're going to start on. Me and you've obviously mentioned it quite a lot this season. Whether Ange would get another chance. His chances definitely increased after Bilbao when he won that trophy. I mean, a lot of the fans that maybe he had lost, he had won them back, especially the ones that were in Bilbao, especially the ones that went to the stadium and watched the game. You know, they were singing the Ange song again. And it was almost like that, yes, we finished 17th in the league, but you've won us a trophy. And that was kind of where the Spurs fans were going with. And you were going to give us, we heard Ange's speech at the parade. Season 3 is going to be better than season 2. And then he actually said in an interview with Australian TV that he wished he hadn't said that, because sometimes they kill off the main character. And that's exactly what's happened. Imagine comparing Tottenham Hotspur to a TV series, but that's the way it's been on. And we'll look back at some of Ange's moments, but it's kind of been like that for Spurs. I mean, 2 years ago today, Ange was announced as a Spurs manager. Not many people knew he was in England, to be honest. Obviously, in Ireland, a lot of people knew him because of the Celtic connection. But before he went to Celtic, nobody really knew who he was. And I don't think anyone could have imagined, like he's probably going to be one of the most remembered managers, even if he never manages in the Premier League again. I don't think he'll be forgotten about because of the circumstances around Spurs and him. But let's start with that breaking news. Big Ange is no longer the Spurs manager. He's been sacked today. 2 years to the day in charge. And despite winning the Europa League 16 days ago, despite ending that 17-year wait for a trophy, the first European trophy in 41 years, he's been sacked. I mean, how do you put that into words?
I mean, I've said to you first. I said to you, it doesn't matter if he wins the Europa League. I thought he was going to be gone just because of the league form. I know, but I actually read the Spurs statement, and it's very, very strange. They said they didn't base it off an emotional decision, but they've won a trophy for the first time in 17 years, a European trophy for the first time in 40 years. Should that not be based on emotion? But
it's quite a long statement, which is unusual when a manager's sacked. I mean, the only R one I can think of was the Poch one. It was quite long as well. You know, the managers that have been gone since that, they haven't had a statement like that.
Did you read Ange's statement? He didn't mention the board whatsoever.
Yep, he mentioned the fans, the coaches, everyone, but he didn't mention the board, as you say.
Maybe there was just a breakdown in communication there.
Yeah, I mean it's quite interesting because the statement that read that despite winning the Europa League and ending that long wait for a trophy, the fact that he's only the third manager in Spurs' history to win a European trophy. He's put himself in history, the statement said, but only 78 points from the last 66 Premier League games, which culminated in 38 of those being this season, finished in 17th, the lowest ever Premier League finish that Spurs have had. And they think that the Premier League's going, over 30 years. He had the worst ever league season. Although it did say in the statement that, injuries played a part, no doubt, and that there was a decision from Ange and the coaches that they were going to focus on the Europa League when it became apparent that they were never going to finish in a European place in the league. A big gamble, but one that paid off. Even the last sort of 10 games of the season when they had players fit, Van de Ven and Romero didn't really play in the Premier League, and when they did, they only played 45 minutes just to keep. Whereas in the Europa League, he kind of got his strongest team out from the last 16 right up until the final when he lost Kulusevski, Madison, and Bergville. Still got the line in the final. So I mean, how do you think? I mean, is this a fair decision? If you're Ange now, do you feel that you just earned the right of a season 3? Because he obviously felt it that he was going to get an opportunity. Because I don't think, yes, we can get carried away with emotion, but he did shout it out on that bus that season 3 is going to be better than season 2. And he also says in his interview with Straight on TV last week, he very much believes he'll be the manager next season. And obviously now we know he won't be.
It's a strange one, but for me, I've said it all season long. Winning trophies is great, but your league form's your bread and butter, and that 22 defeats is, yes, there's been injuries, yes, there's been different circumstances, but that's just simply not good enough. Now, I do think if Spurs had finished, say, 6th and won a trophy, I don't think he would have been sacked, but I think it's the fact that they finished so low, and he's statistically the worst manager at Spurs in the Premier League era. So I think that played a part in it. But it's weird because a few months ago you were saying, "Oh, he needs to go, and now he's so." Football is based on emotion. So because he won that trophy, you're sort of saying he deserves another. But I likened it. They Ten Hag. He won 2 trophies at United, and we all know how that ended. So maybe Spurs have just decided to do it quickly rather than let it rumble on the next season, and then they start off badly again.
Yeah, I kind of backed Ange up until January, February time, and went out of the cup against Liverpool. Was a pretty poor performance. I was at that game, and the league form was getting worse and worse. But when they beat AZ, I was kind of like, well, he's got an opportunity here. And I think, to be honest, when we beat Frankfurt, I was kind of back on side with Ange.
Yeah.
That, if he wins this, then it'd be justified. I know it was a big gamble. People could say it was a favourable draw. At the end of the day, still had he beat Frankfurt, who won the competition in 2022. And they beat United, who've been in 5 finals in the last 5 years. And last year beat Man City. In the FA Cup final, he won a league. And it was United's fully fit team. United had everyone available. So it was as strong as the United team as he could have faced. Obviously, United team that have been struggling, but still a team that are capable. And we've seen United this year capable in certain games. They've got over the line and they've played some of their best games against some of the big teams. But for whatever reason, the 4 times they played Spurs, they never really performed. And, that was kind of Spurs' saving grace this year that United were there and they beat them in 2 cups and they beat them in the league twice. But
I think United and Southampton are the only teams not they beat Spurs this season, which is mental.
Yeah, and like he says, that the at times it was quite a frustrating Premier League season, and quite a. One week you were thinking these players are down tools, and then another week you were thinking, well, maybe they're and maybe it's confidence, maybe it's but when they won the I know it's very easy to say when they won the trophy, but they all went away in their international breaks, and they've been doing various interviews and. Yeah. Some of them even have took to social media themselves and put out statements about, obviously not today, but in the last 2 weeks about how much they've enjoyed playing under Ange, how much he deserves a second chance. There's been a lot of injuries, there's been a lot of turmoil, and players have been struggling confidence-wise and obviously there are a lot of injuries too. Once a lot of players are getting injured, everyone's sort of thinking, maybe I'm going to get injured as well. And there's been a real negative feeling around the club. But when I was in Bilbao, that feeling had changed that night. You were part of those celebrations, and you're thinking, well, maybe now, if Ange gets the backing in the summer, he's unlikely to get as many injuries as he had this season. Yeah. Maybe Spurs can kick on, but the club obviously feel that a change is necessary. And I mean, Daniel Levy's come under a lot of criticism in his tenure at Spurs. He's made a lot of big decisions, some right and some wrong. Probably more wrong in the last 10 years or so. You think back to the Pochettino decision, that's not went well at all. Mourinho and Conte cried about him, not giving him the funds. Nuno was a circus. They couldn't get a manager, and it took them 72 days to get one. He was sacked after 10 Premier League games. The fans had turned on him. And Ange obviously hit that great start. Even last season, I think a lot of the fans were still on board, and it was probably around Christmas time and the New Year when the fans had really started to turn on him. And there was that incident at Chelsea with him and the fans, but it had seemed that Bilbao had patched that up. And I suppose it would have been easier, Owen, for Daniel Levy to stick with Ange, wouldn't it? So, I mean, and Daniel Levy's put himself in the firing line here, because if he brings on the next manager and it goes terribly wrong, then he is going to take the flag for this.
I know, but it's one of them. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't situations, because if he does bring in, we know who it's going to be more than likely. So it's going to be Thomas Frank by all reports. Him or Marco Silva are the two leading candidates, which big job going from, there's a small club like Brentford, they one of the
We'll come on to speak about
one of the bigger
Frank and potentials very shortly.
Yeah.
But I mean, do you think he's made the right decision in sacking Ange? And I mean, and is the right decision only a good decision if the next manager succeeds?
That's what I was going to say. We'll not know if it's a good decision until we get on the next season and see how Spurs get on. But for me, as a neutral, I think he had to make the decision. I said if he wins the Europa League, he'll get sacked. If he loses it, he'll get sacked. So I just think I think the writing's been on the wall. So for me, I think it's the right decision. But we could be sitting here in 4 or 5 months' time, and when the season starts, and Spurs could be in a worse situation because Frank hasn't, or whoever it is, hasn't dealt with Champions League football and then league football and then cups and then. So
I'll tell you what, the next manager that walks in, his first competitive game is going to be a European Super Cup final. So I mean, what an opportunity to get off to a great start. Of course, they're going to be massive underdogs in that game, but it's a one-off game.
Do you think it affects Spurs? Do you think like this means Romero will go? Do you think
we'll come on to talk about that? Just on Ange as well. Do you think there'll be clubs looking at Ange now? You know, and thinking, well, I mean, he did the impossible at Spurs in terms of winning a trophy. And you could also say, like, obviously we've said the negatives there about the 17th place, but you could say, I mean, he lost most of his team the whole season and still managed to win a European trophy. You know, and going on to that final, as bad as United have been, a lot of people did still see Man United as favourites because of their history of winning trophies and their history of winning trophies whilst not being at their best. Whereas Spurs have been a team that even when they've been at their best under Alex Pochettino have found ways to lose big games. And I remember Carragher earlier on the season after the Anfield game where Spurs were beaten in the second leg. He says, how could you ever fancy Spurs in a big game? We all knew Liverpool were going to turn this around tonight. Well, 2 or 3 months later, Spurs sort of debunked that theory in terms of they went and won a big game, missing some of their best players. I mean, Bergville, Kulusevski, Maddison didn't play, and Son never played the first 70 minutes. So you could argue 4 of their most important players didn't take part in that final. What's that?
Solanke didn't look 100% fit either.
No.
He'll walk into our job. Whether that's in England or not is a different question. But there'll be clubs around the continent. Like I could see him going. I don't know. There's something about him screams Dortmund to me. Like, that sort of attacking football. I know they have a manager at the minute, but I think he'll get a job in Europe. No bother.
Do you think the Premier League will must back Ange? You know, we always say that we must managers like Mourinho because obviously not just that he's a world-class manager and was, but even now Mourinho wouldn't be on that level of the likes of your Klopps, your Peps. You know, some people are even putting Arteta in there, even though he hasn't won anything. You know, Slot could make his way into that category very soon. Emery's probably in that category at the moment. Eddie Howe potentially, but in terms of the top managers, I mean, Ange still has a long way to go to put himself in that bracket. But in terms of his media work, some of the things he says, I mean, I always won things on my second season. You know, it was a big statement they make, and probably one of the most iconic lines we've heard.
Probably is the most iconic. I know we've had banter back and forth throughout the season about him, but as a person, I like him. Like, I know there's some things he said where I'm going, oh, he's arguing, but it's the same with Klopp. Like, opposition fan, once Klopp's away, you're like, oh, you miss him in the league because it's just he has that infectious personality. But I wouldn't be.
If we're believing who the next manager is, and we'll speak about him shortly, his press conferences will definitely not be as entertaining as big Ange's were.
No, he's if it is Thomas Frank, I don't think he'll be as energetic. But for me, it's going to be an interesting watch as a neutral. But I don't know how you as a Spurs fan are you excited about the potential appointment of Thomas Frank?
I will come on to speak about him very shortly. But I mean, I'm on a very few Spurs group chats. I'm on Chris Collins group chat. You know, some massive Spurs fans on there, biggest Spurs channel going, and everyone in that group chat, and I'm chatting. There's maybe 10 people on it. Are all very disappointed with this decision to sack Ange. I've been on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Some of the big Spurs accounts, they're devastated because they feel that, yes, it was a very difficult season, but this man deserved a second chance because of what he delivered in Bilbao. And, it wasn't like he had a fully fit team like we mentioned all season.
Yeah.
And, you could argue the last 3 months of the season, Spurs had wrote them off because they were never going to get relegated. And Europe was going to be the priority.
Yeah.
And if you look at the European form, they beat after they lost the first leg, the AZ, they beat AZ, drew by Frankfurt at home, beat Frankfurt away, beat Bodo home and away, and beat United. Also in the League Cup, they beat Man City, they beat Man United, they beat Liverpool in the first leg at home. So in the cup competitions, he did do quite well this year. I think he only won 12 games in the league, but I mean, in the League Cup alone, he had 3 massive victories against 3 teams that are,
to be fair,
probably in better. Well, maybe not Man United, but Man City and Liverpool, who finished in the top 3. So, he did do quite well in those. And last season, he did finish 5th, which this year would have got him into the Champions League, and he only missed out by 2 points on the final day.
But I will say,
it was a great start, but that would have been seen as a successful season. He also lost Harry Kane 48 hours before his first Premier League game, so he has had to deal with a lot of issues there. And if I know we've watched it all, but I mean, if I was a Spurs fan and I fell off the face of the earth for 2 years and didn't have any access to the internet, and I says, well, they finished 5th in their first year, and their second season they got the League Cup semi-final, lost at they won their first leg, lost at Anfield, who were the league winners that year. Comfortable league winners, and also won the Europa League. I'd say, well, that man's done a decent job.
It's a weird one, but just as you're saying, there is Levy under more pressure now. He definitely is, because as we say there, he loves and die by this decision. If I don't think it's strange, right? Because I don't think Spurs will finish 17th again next season. So theoretically, it can only get better in terms of the league form. But you aren't going to win the Champions League. I would imagine. You aren't going to win.
Brave man, they'd be calling that, wouldn't you? If you thought Spurs could go and do that now.
You aren't going to win the league. So your best bet is what? Top 4, top 5, and then a cup again. So
interestingly, a lot of Spurs fans are saying if the next manager comes on, and we'll mention some of the names being linked, and obviously one in particular, and if Spurs finish 6th next year, 1-0. That will not give Spurs fans the same feeling that they had this year. So it is a strange one. I don't necessarily think there's many Spurs fans out there at the moment that feel that they're anyway close to winning the league. And I think the main reason for that is not that they feel that they're not good enough to win the league as a club. Daniel Levy does not pay the wages, or Ange do not pay the wages to attract the top players. Spurs have spent money over the last few seasons on players, but the wages don't match the fees, and that is their issue. That's why when Desiree Douy has an option for PSG or Spurs, of course PSG are flying now. But maybe last year PSG weren't as attractive as they will be this year.
Were you looking to sign him, man?
Yeah, apparently it was the training ground around, but there was an issue with wages, Spurs, and so again, this is a common theme that they can get players, they can buy Solanke for 65 million, but he's only on a 50 grand a week contract, so that's it. There's no issue there. But it's when they go to chat to somebody that wants 150, 200 grand a week. Spurs feel that you have to earn them type of contracts like Harry Kane did, Lloris did, Son did. But you have to always be there your whole career to do that. And it's just not realistic. So I think at the moment, Spurs fans probably feel that, well, we've been in the Champions League before, and we don't necessarily sign top players anyway. So, I mean, we would much rather finish mid-table every year and win cups, because at least we can remember those memories. So it's a strange decision. But from what we're hearing is, there's a lot of restructuring being done behind the scenes, and
because there was a lot of
funds being pumped into the club, because that's what this club needs to win at the minute. They're not going to get any higher than the odd season in the Champions League if they don't really invest in the club and bring in the players that want the big wages.
I seen Mason's gone, some woman's gone. I forget her name.
Daniel Levy's left or right hand woman, and there's also talk that Levy could also be stepping aside. Now at the minute that looks premature, but there's some big decisions to be made at the football club. Are you just going to be a team that tries to finish in the top 4, top 5? And look, I've said this openly a few times this season. I think it's harder than ever because you've got Newcastle now, you've got Villa. United are going to come back eventually. Chelsea are spending a lot of money. Arsenal have come back from the Wenger days. Liverpool are in their pomp. Man City's not going to go anywhere. So it's very difficult to get on. All right, there might be a 5th spot, but there's still maybe going to be 2 or 3 massive clubs missing out every year.
It's Sure, I think Liverpool missed out 3 seasons ago now, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's just on, you're looking at the, just as you're on about players not wanting to come because of wages. I was frustrated for years with FSG because of that. So I sort of, I know we paid money, but but look at us now. We won the league and our owners are going, right. We want to keep winning. So we're investing in good players. We've signed our two best players. Yes, we lost Trent, but we got a
Yeah, well,
10 million.
our thing is you probably need smart recruitment, and Spurs and Liverpool probably had that at times where they got, well, Kane came through the ranks, but Son was a great buy. He come on and developed on the world class player. Salah, that he wasn't signed as a world class player, developed on the one. Mane,
Robertson as well.
Robertson, Trent, all those players have tied on that.
Yeah.
But I think it's very difficult to keep doing that. And that's why you're probably seeing Liverpool now going to buy like at the likes of Florian Wirtz, and we'll speak about the transfers that are on, but it's very difficult to keep relying on good recruitment and good, a good youth system, because you're always going to meet players that never maybe go to their potential. So
you look at Man City, they didn't buy much in the summer last year, and they fell off a good bit this season.
Yeah. Final on Ange is like, we've said earlier, a number of players have backed Ange. How do you think the players, how are they going to take this now? Because Porro and Romero, we mentioned there, Porro and Romero both kind of hinted that, that if Ange doesn't stay, then maybe they would think about their futures. Madison seems to be very, very fond of him. I think Son is possibly at the time where he could be moving on anyway. It might not affect him as much. He's won a trophy now. He's the captain that's won that trophy. He can kind of move on with his life now. But there's big decisions to be made now with some of the players, and we've seen a lot of teams acting early in the market. Spurs have not been doing anything, obviously, because they've been sorting out this situation with Ange. But
then it's not even just a manager. It's like you're sacking everybody. It seems like, so who's going to lead negotiations? It's probably going to be Levy, but he's a hard man to negotiate with. Our players going to look at that and go, is Spurs really? Yes, they won a trophy. Yes, they've Champions League, but is Spurs really a place where I want to go at the minute where everything's up in the air? Because
it's so much uncertainty at the moment.
We'll speak about it. We'll speak about it when we get on to it. But even United, they've signed Cunha. They're going to sign Mbuemo. They're looking to get Gyökeres, and they lost the Europa League final. So it's strange.
Funny how things turn around. I mean, United fans have almost not, they've forgotten about it, but United fans are excited at the moment about seeing Mbuemo and Cunha, whereas Spurs fans are kind of feeling like, won that final 2 weeks ago, but it almost feels like
we lost
moved on now, and everything's just downward spiral. But Owen, we've kind of mentioned it a few times. The next Spurs manager, and we've been saying this for every 18 months or 2 years, for the last 10 years, I think, at the moment. Thomas Frank is seen as the heavy favourite for the job. Done a fantastic job at Brentford. Can't take that away from him, but this is a completely different level.
Yeah.
I think he's got minimal experience in Europe. He's never managed in the Champions League. So I think this is what's frustrating Spurs fans as well. If Inzaghi was coming on, I think there would be a different feeling. Well, you're bringing in a manager that's got 2 Champions League finals, won a number of Serie A titles. He was linked. I'm not sure how much truth was really on. But Spurs are never going to be able to compete with the Saudi. The Saudi, he's the highest paid manager of all time. But I think it's because it's a Thomas Frank coming on that, people are saying, well, Ange has won a Europa League. He's won titles in all different countries he's been on. All right, there's a lot of flaws in the tactics, and I think he's proven to some extent he's willing to change that for certain games, like we see in the final.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people see Thomas Frank and they just remember Nuno. Nuno done the exact same job. He maybe even say done a better job in terms of he took them,
because he got one in the Europe,
out of the Championship, but he also got them in the Europe and got them to a quarter final. And I think they were beaten extra time.
They were very close to FA Cup final as well, mate.
Yeah, they were 2-0 up and lost the semi-final, actually. But again, Brentford, I don't think Brentford have played near Wembley. I think they actually were in the year they were in the Championship. We beat them in the COVID year in the semi-final of the League Cup. But in terms of the Premier League here, I mean, not that it's an easy job, because he's obviously lost Ivan Toney and our players have left. But what I would say is there's no pressure there at all, really. If they stay up, I think they're pretty happy. They can kind of, when they play in the cups, they play weakened teams because it's all about staying in the Premier League. And people say Thomas Frank brilliant this year, 8th this year. 2 years ago we finished 8th with Brentford, just missed out in European football. But they did finish 16th. They did finish 16th last the year before. And between that,
finishing 8th with Spurs isn't going to be accepted.
No, and of course you could argue he'll have a stronger squad, stronger players, more of a budget. But I mean, this is a big gamble in my opinion. If it's believed to be that it's Thomas Frank, and
He's
look,
a,
his name's all over it everywhere. Every senior journalist is saying he is the favorite, and he is. So I'm sure he's probably told Spurs that he's. You know how these things work. Spurs would definitely have conversations.
so apparently, I seen apparently Brentford are posting for a new assistant manager,
See,
and the assistant manager's been with Frank everywhere he goes. So that tells you it all, really. But it's it's a strange one because he always gets linked with big jobs, and a manager gets sacked. And I said to you, I thought it was going to be Iriola, but it looks like he's staying. He looks like he's going to do a rebuild at Bournemouth. But it is a big job, as you say, at Brentford. It's less pressure, and then when you go on the Spurs, there's going to be more money, more expectation, more
bigger
games as well.
characters, they need bigger characters
Yeah,
to manage as well.
bigger games as well. And his football is a complete difference to Ange. Like he plays more, not completely defensive, but he is.
He's a very adaptable manager, isn't he?
He adapts to the opposition. I know. I know.
Do you think? Sorry, Owen, before you come on, do you think that's one of the reasons that he's so high up the chain that
He's
when Frank
adapting.
goes, if they play Southampton at home, they'll go on the front foot, possession based. They're very good at set pieces as well. They can play that kind of game. They don't mind going long throws. But if they go to Anfield away or they play Liverpool at home, and they've had some good results against Liverpool at home and Man City home and away, for example, some of those best results where he's able to play counter attack. Do you think is that why he's being looked at? Is he's a very flexible manager?
Probably, but like, are Spurs going to accept being defensive in them games? Because Spurs want to attack no matter who they play. But I would say too, like a few years ago, you were after Slot because he's a very adaptable manager, and we've seen that this season. So it's a big job for Thomas Frank. But for you as a Spurs fan, like, does he excite you or?
I worry about his personality.
Nah.
Not that he's. He does have the odd, laugh with this guy, and he's a very nice man. But has he got the chops to
Can he
deal
handle the big names?
with this level of expectation?
That's why I think he's never been really. When Klopp left, it was never mentioned with Liverpool, really, or when United sacked people.
I
He
think
was never.
Simon Jordan made this analogy about Ten Hag. He's a small man in a big suit. For whatever we say about Ange or whatever, he always kind of felt when he spoke, he
Well,
listened.
he's definitely not a small man.
No, but you always kind of tuned in, whereas you kind of listened to Ten Hag at times. And he was, you were kind of zoned out. Whereas Ange you were always in the conversation, and he always had an answer for a reporter. And
But like
many
Mourinho,
times he defended the club when there was a lot of flack at him. His integrity was questioned a lot.
yeah,
Perhaps unfairly. I think at times it was verged on bullying, some of the stuff that Ange had to put up with. But he fought through it all, and he never wavered in his belief that he was going to deliver what he delivered in Bilbao. So I think you need to be that bullish type. I think Slot handles the media very well at times.
Klopp that as well.
Pep's very good at it. Even the likes of Mourinho and stuff was excellent.
Arteta's not very good at it.
No, he's not, but very tactical manager, Arteta, isn't he?
Yeah.
Probably sometimes too tactical. But look, I think that'll be the biggest concern I have with Frank is has he got the chops? They cope with this. I mean, people might laugh watching this, but Spurs fans expect going to every game that if they're not going to want it, they're going to compete. A lot of Spurs fans go to Anfield every year and get beat, but they still go there expecting they put on a performance. It's not like Brentford where it's a free hit. Spurs never go into any game thinking it's a free hit. Yeah. And that's the difference.
That's why I think, as I say, he wasn't considered for the Liverpool job, United job.
And Brentford is used to playing one game a week. The only time he would have been the Championship when they were playing maybe they were 2 games a week or whatever times, or the odd times they were 3. But it's Brentford, and he's been there. Brentford have been a Premier League club for 4 or 5 seasons, and he's been used to playing once a week. And this is a totally different level next year.
Do you think this puts Brentford in the conversation for relegation?
Well, I mean, it looks nailed on. They're going to lose Mbeumo. Vassa's only got a year left in his contract. He's probably going to move on. So, I mean, there will be people at Brentford panicking that maybe if you lose Frank and Mbeumo and Vassa in the one window, it's going to be difficult.
Do you have to pay for Frank?
Yeah, they had to pay Ange $4 million to sack him, and then I believe there's a compensation fee to Brentford as well. So, could be a $10 million job, like all on. So,
it's big change in summer for Spurs. So It's gonna be interesting. I wonder who Brentford will get to
But
replace
I
him.
think that's going to be. I think that's going to be an absolute nightmare for the fans. But I mean, surely they
Yeah,
were crying out for some stability going into the Champions League next season. No, you're thinking, well, I mean, we don't know who the manager is. Players now you have to look at this manager and think, well,
be
I'm
honest.
not being funny, but there's going to be some players maybe don't know who Thomas Frank is because maybe they don't watch Brentford a lot. So, it
Yeah,
won't be easy to convince players to even become. Whereas they would have seen by Ange, for the last couple of years, some of the stuff he was saying, some of the stuff he was doing, and thinking, you know what, I wouldn't mind playing for him. And
we,
believe it or not, there probably is some players that love playing that high attacking football system
yeah,
where, and anything that goes wrong, he kind of takes a flag and says, "Well, look, it's my responsibility." So he kind of took the pressure off players
we,
like Pedro Porro, who we know
yeah.
wasn't the strongest defender, but in terms of Porro's attacking ability, he's unlocked him in terms of when Conte was there, he couldn't get a chin at a Porro, and then all of a sudden, Ange just made him a really, really good player going forward.
Yeah. Do you think he'll take anyone from Brentford? Woofies, players wise?
Glenn was gone, isn't he? And then
Mm.
Vissa, they've been linked with him before, but I'm sure Brentford will be trying to get someone on the contract that we can't take any of their players.
Well, have Brentford signed anyone yet? Apart from no, they signed Kelleher.
But final thoughts then? Do you think Thomas Frank will be the next Spurs manager?
It's looking. I'm 99.9% sure it's going to happen now. If not, if it collapses somehow and we're sitting here for another 72 days, God knows what happens. But I think it's nailed on.
Seems like it's moving pretty quickly. And let's move on to the end of the season review. We haven't actually spoken since the last day. Obviously,
we were going to do the podcast last week, but then the thing with Liverpool happened and it just didn't feel appropriate.
Well, that's it as well. The obviously the parade that went wrong. Thankfully, no one has lost their life, which is fantastic. And obviously it won't be forgotten about, but it's easier to forget now that no one's lost their life.
Yeah.
And let's look at the end of the season review. We'll touch on the last day of the season. I mean, it was quite a dramatic day in terms of Newcastle at home to Everton lost.
Yeah.
We thought Villa were a shoe-in to go to Old Trafford and won.
Got a red card.
Red card, and obviously there's a very controversial goal that was ruled out, but they'll probably feel deep down they didn't do enough in that game because even up until the red card, they were second best against Man United. Newcastle were second best against Everton. And Chelsea, probably the most difficult looking fixture on paper, and went to Forest and won. So, of course, Man City only needed a draw, and they got a result of they won easy at Fulham. So it was Man City, Chelsea, and Newcastle who took those final 3 European Champions League spots, along with Liverpool and Arsenal. Of course, Spurs now join them, and we have 6 teams from the same competition for the first time.
Did you see Crystal Palace might not get into the Europa League?
Yeah, seen that. Drogheda is having some sort of issue too with it. I heard Derry City have their application ready to go as soon as they get one of it. So
why not? I heard that Forest could get bumped up to the Europa League if and then Brighton will get the Conference League if Palace can't. I'll be gut wrenching, wouldn't it?
I'll be sorry too because Brighton and Palace are rivals.
That's a big gut wrenching.
But anyway, Chelsea won against all the odds, fought back from probably that one at Fulham, turned their season around. That last minute goal, they were 1-0 down in the game, and I think they only won 6 of their last 7 games, and that got them into the top 4.
They had a good strong end of the season, and Forest on the opposite hand had a wonky end of the season. Like we were there that day when they played Leicester, mind, and it looked like they were all set for the 3 points, and they crumbled. And then West Ham, they drew with West Ham. Did they win any of that? I think they beat. Who they beat?
Beat West Ham, but they lost to Brentford.
That's what it was. They lost to Brentford, which really killed them. So I think the Chelsea deserve it probably on their end of the season form. So you know what? Regardless, it's been a great season for Forest. Like I think a lot of people had them tipped as relegation candidates, and for them to be in whatever European competition they end on, it's a great season for them.
Yeah. Of course, Chelsea a few days later went on. They won the Conference League. I have to say, do you know what? It was a really good final. I thought Betis were excellent in the first half. Ran out of steam. Chelsea come back on late, of course, and steamrolled them in the second half. But it was probably better watching the Europa League finals. Definitely.
Even the Champions League final.
That competition some merit now that people were laughing that Lux of West Ham won it, but the fact that Chelsea have won it, Betis are a decent side who got to the final. You think a lot of teams will start maybe taking that a lot more seriously because the Chelsea players at the end of the game were celebrating like crazy.
No, I just no. I can't take it seriously. If Liverpool were on it, like if we wanted, I'd be like, we want it, but it's just not. No,
But I
nothing
think it's easy to say that though. Do you
true.
know what I mean? If Liverpool were on a final, a European final, I know it's the Conference League, right?
Mm,
I still think the pubs would be packed with full Liverpool fans.
probably,
And I still
but,
think they would take a massive travelling crowd to wherever the game is. Yes,
probably,
it
but
might not be the Champions League, but it's still a European trophy.
uh, even if we get to the like, for me, it's the Europa League or Champions League. But I'll be happy if we won it, like
And
because
look,
then
obviously, nobody wants to be in it because they want to be in the
uh,
Orwell. But when you're in it, I think it's
I
like
if
maybe not at
Liverpool.
the very start, but when you're, I mean, Chelsea played their full strength team in the final. They wanted to win that game.
No, if you get the final, you're going to want it. Like, but I think it's sort of good for Chelsea because now they can say, "Oh, we're the only team to win every European competition." So that's a plus for them. But uh, in terms of the fair play to them, they won a trophy. And Maresca, who I think in my preseason predictions I had them 12th, or
Yeah,
11th or
first manager sacked, too, didn't he?
Maresca. Who was the first Ten Hag?
Think is that the biggest surprise of the season? Chelsea under the top four and won a trophy.
Oh, well, not the trophy part because
Well.
not the trophy part because I thought they would win the Conference League quite easily, but getting into the top 4 or 5, I didn't see that coming. So fair play to them.
What I would say is Newcastle. You
They
thought
were
that every
lucky.
game perfect. They had their celebration out before Everton in front of their fans, won easy against Southampton. You're thinking Newcastle blow them away in the last day because Everton only play for, and Everton were excellent. And I'm sure there's Everton fans thinking, well, next season if we can carry this on, maybe Everton can be almost like a renaissance and get back to pushing for Europe. But it'll be interesting to see how teams fare going to the new stadium compared to Goodison Park because it looks a lot more welcoming. But anyway, Newcastle got on there because Villa were unable to beat United. So
But
great
that
season for
fella,
Newcastle.
a great season, winning their first trophy in 50 years.
But very
Obviously,
fortunate on the last day.
yeah.
South.
Obviously, it was against Liverpool. They won the trophy, but if there's a team that I don't mind losing a trophy to, it would be Newcastle or Spurs. Maybe not Spurs now because they won something and Newcastle did, but that we'll speak about it. But that Villa goal, for the life of me, I don't know why or how that was disallowed. So if I was Villa, I'd be very angry. But then again, Martinez, I don't know where his head was at.
Just quickly in Newcastle, only Villa. Isak, Gordon, Bruno, I think they'll all stay now because of Champions League.
Probably I don't know about Gordon, because I don't think Eddie Howe fancies him that much. I don't. But I think Isak and Bruno will definitely stay. But Gordon probably will. But I think if Gordon was the move,
You
I
think
think
if they got the right money for Gordon, they'd let him go.
And we all know. I'm not just saying this, but we all know where Gordon wants to go. So
yeah, I think the only way that happens is if Liverpool sell Diaz for a big fee. And it looks like Diaz is kind of reluctant to go to Saudi. So unless they can find a European buyer where they want something like 85 million.
We rejected a approach from Barca yesterday, I think.
Yeah, but I think Barca would offer a lot less than the Saudi team.
Yeah.
I don't think the issue. I don't think the issue is the fee with Saudi. I think it's the issue that Diaz probably doesn't want to go there.
Which is fair enough. Why would you want to go there? Well, there's.
Yeah, but it makes sense.
Well,
I mean, I was actually chatting to Calum and Mark about this, and they were like, "Well, if you sell Diaz for 50 million, you have to go then with that 50 million and get someone that's as good as him, and it's not easy. Do you know what I mean? So it's.
But Liverpool need to sort out their contracts out because we can't let another player go for free because Konate's probably going to go for free.
Well, this is one thing we discussed. Apparently, he's on quite low wages, and they only sign him for 35 million or something like that. So, I mean, are you better getting 2 more years out of him than letting him go for 50 and having to bring somebody else in? Maybe not as good.
Just say we get 2 more years out of him and then go get a Gordon.
I think if they could get rid of him to Saudi and use that money to buy Gordon, they would do it. But I just don't think he wants to go there. Otherwise, it'll be done by now because I think we're willing to buy him for that kind of money.
And I'm not complaining if we have Diaz for another 2 years because for me, other than Salah, maybe Gakpo, he was our best attacker this season.
Yeah, good player to have. You mentioned them, Villa missed out. I mean, that was a golden opportunity to go to Old Trafford, a team that were on a downer after the Europa League defeat, and they blew it. They didn't play well. Obviously, the red card right on the stroke of half time changed it. Yes, they'll point to a goal that probably should have counted, but they were battered in that game, even in the first half, 11v11, and that was a big surprise because Villa were finishing the season quite strong as well.
Well, then again, United had nothing to play for, so the pressure was off, so they could play without fear or without freedom. But what I will say about that goal is, do you mind the goal a few years ago with the VAR catastrophe where Sheffield United was it the goal that wasn't given? So what goes around comes around too, I suppose. But I think Villa probably have to look at themselves too because they were close to getting a point at the Man City game a few weeks before the season ended. They lost that. I think they dropped points. Didn't they draw with Brentford as well?
I think around March time, Villa were like 10th in the league. And obviously, they were the Champions League, and they've done an amazing run, but almost left themselves no room for error. And they lost the Man City game, and they lost this one, and that was kind of.
They're really struggling financially, I think.
Yeah, they're right on the borderline, and I was going to say, that's why I've let them there. I mean, there's a lot of talk that a lot of teams are after Rodgers, Spurs, Arsenal, Liverpool, have all shown interest.
They still have flipping Coutinho on their books.
Yeah, I think they're trying to get rid of him and just cut his contract up. But like, apparently Villa would want somewhere in the region of 100 million for Rodgers. Now, they struck gold when they signed him. I think it was a year ago for 8 million from Middlesbrough. But what a player he is, and he looks a real talent, and he looks he's only going to get better.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a big fee, but I mean, if Liverpool sign him for obviously it's unlikely because they're looks like they're going to sign Wirtz, but I mean, do you think would a team go to 100 million for him because he is a very talented player? And I mean, would Villa sell at that price?
I mean, if they have, he's probably their most sellable asset. I know they have Watkins, but they're not Watkins is what
29, I think now.
28, 29 now. So he's probably their biggest asset if they want to. You seen it way. I know it's different because Liverpool weren't on the breadline, but you seen it way Coutinho. We sold him and completely revamped our team. And at that time, I thought, oh no, we're selling our best player. So if I don't know, but I
think there's a chance Watkins goes as well because I mean he's not going to play Champions League football next season, and he's then I think he'd be 30 the year after. So he might because time up.
Where would he go though? Because Arsenal's getting Sesko by the looks of things. United's getting Gyökeres.
He could move. He could have a European move. I don't know, but
I wouldn't really want them at Liverpool, to be honest.
And I also think as well, there's big pressure on Emery now. Not almost like a victim of his own, a bit like Pochettino, where there's an expectation now for Villa to get into the top four or win a trophy. Villa fans have seen Palace won, Spurs won, and Newcastle won this season. So the kind of excuse that none of the sort of smaller teams or the teams that don't win usually aren't winning. It's all was Man City, Liverpool. Arsenal fans are saying the exact same about Arteta. No more excuses because Spurs, Palace, and Newcastle have all won trophies this season. So, I mean, I think it's big pressure on Emery next year. I mean, if they don't finish in the top four next year, and they have spent quite a bit of money, like you said, they're on the breadline of PSR. Like, they might say, "What an amazing job you've done," but maybe you've taken us as far as we can.
And it will be interesting if they do. I don't think they'll lose Rodgers this year. I can't see it, but if they don't get Champions League again next year, it could be one they watch because it's a World Cup year as well next year, so players will really want to put their stamp on things.
Well, I've got to be looking at that Europa League, but I'm thinking we've got a great chance on that. Like,
well, who's on it in terms of? I don't really know. I think
obviously United and Spurs aren't on it, and United aren't on it. Spurs are in Champions League, United's not. I think
Forest could be on it.
But I think in terms of the team, I'm trying to think of the team. Bilbao's in the Champions League. They're in the semi-final. They're not on it. Frankfurt are in the quarterfinal. They're in the Champions League.
Yeah.
So a lot of them teams that people didn't rate have actually qualified for the Champions League by their own league.
Could be a route for Villa.
Yeah. I'm not sure what. Obviously, I'm not sure who the Italian team is.
I have a feeling it's not AC Milan. They didn't qualify for
it. Completely, didn't they?
I have a feeling. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling it's
Fiorentina.
Did you see the Atalanta manager went to Roma there?
Their man actually could be going to Atalanta, the manager from Southampton, Church.
That's done and dusted, apparently. That's madness.
It'll be interesting to see what happens if all. You mentioned them earlier on, Nottingham Forest. I think they'll look at this as a massive missed opportunity. The position they found themselves in, they had such a poor last sort of 8 or 9 games.
They were third right up until. They were third right up until after. Was it after Christmas?
I think they were third right up until about March time. To be honest, I think after that international break, they just never really recovered.
It was just too
They're
much
on
for
the
them.
team.
And I think they're on our team. They're not on the breadline, but they're on our team. I think we'll lose players. I think teams will come snuffing for Gibbs White. I don't
Yeah,
think Man City will go from now because they're getting Man City are
Rangers.
getting Reinders and what do you call the boy from Leon?
Yeah, Turkey.
Turkey. Yeah. Did you see the
He
goal he
looked,
scored
he
last
looked a
night?
real talent last night. And that game last night was unbelievable.
I was
People
mad.
say the Nations League's not. I mean, them two games were really good games. I'm sure the game on Sunday night. I'm not sure how much the two teams will fancy the third place playoff, but the actual game on Sunday night, Portugal and Spain, will be a really, really good game
Yeah.
and a good way to end the season.
Before we get on the Forest, Yamal is just wow.
Special.
he's
Ballon
mental.
d'Or now. Who's won it? If Spain won that, is Jamal get that?
It's between him and Dembele, I think. Interesting.
So Forest Conference League could be Europa League if Palace find trouble. We'll have to look at that. Maybe we'll know more when the fixtures come out because that'll be our next podcast on the 18th of June when the fixtures come out for the new season. And of course, those new fixtures will include Leeds, Burnley, and Sunderland. The one
I was going to say there. I wonder what team Liverpool. Which one of them are Liverpool going to have away in the first day of the season? Because we always get it.
We always get a draw. A few times we've had that as well.
We always get an away team.
We wouldn't want to play Leeds away in the first game, or even Sunderland away. I think they'll be rampant to the empty spots.
Although we played it away last season, so
yeah.
How will they fare? I just think they'll fare the same.
Who do you think's the most realistic chance of staying up out of those three?
Leeds.
Sunderland, I think, have to really attack the market because they're the team that started the playoff final, not one day of experience of Premier League football between them.
And they're all your man who scored the winner, he's away to Brighton already. Joe Bellingham's going to Dortmund. Now, I'm not getting sucked into our Bellingham going to Dortmund. I'm not doing it.
There doesn't seem to be as much hype around Job now, in fairness, but talented player. So you think all three of these are going straight back down again? If that happened again, do you think then there will be a discussion about doing something to help these teams? Because if it's just the same three go down every year, will that make it less exciting? Will that make it almost make the playoffs irrelevant, really? Because I mean, who's going to want to watch the play? Because you just know you're fit.
There has to be. I don't know what they can do though.
Yeah.
So it's just the mud. Not even the top bit, but the mud bit of the Premier League is just getting stronger. But
yeah, I think there was a 16-point gap between Spurs and 18th. So I mean, that shows you. I mean, probably per Spurs where they could have lost another 4 games and still stayed up.
It's I would love to see at least one of them stay up, but I do think they'll go straight back down again. To be honest, but how do you see it?
Depends what Leeds do. I think Burnley and Sunderland are going to struggle because I'm not sure what the budget's like there. Leeds might have a bit more about them.
Did Sunderland not get 200 million for winning the playoffs?
100 million, but that's peanuts in terms of what they mean. How do they spend that on? How do they track player? It's going to be difficult.
The only thing I'll say about Leeds is they need a new goalkeeper because that boy Miller is one of the worst keepers I've ever seen in my life.
Leeds are a very attacking team as well, and Sunderland are very attacking. I think Burnley or Parker's got them quite resolute. Maybe that'll give them. We see with Luton. Luton's kind of were the best team of the last 6 that come up. I think they only got relegated in the final day, so they were made them so hard to beat. It's
just I can't see who out of the teams that are in the Premier League at the minute, excluding these 3, I can't see who goes down.
Yeah, and I think the biggest issue these teams have is the squad. It's just so difficult. If they get an injury or 2, it's very difficult to bring that quality back on. But look, we'll see how they fare, and we'll see who they play in the first games on the 18th. Fixtures are at 9 o'clock that day, so we'll be doing a podcast that evening of the fixtures.
Is that a Monday?
Excited. What's that?
Is that a Monday?
Wednesday, I think. It's 2 weeks on Wednesday. No, a week on Wednesday. It's a week on Wednesday.
That's mad that we're already thinking about that's mental.
Before you know it, then it'll be the Club World Cup will be on, so the football for people to watch if they want to watch it, and then the pre-season will be back, and then all of a sudden
the Club World Cup. I'm just going to watch Madrid.
Let's come on to the awards. We're going to do your team of the season, our player of the season, our young player of the season, and our manager of the season, and then we're going to finally look at some of the big transfer stories that are around at the moment. So, team of the season, We're going to put yours up first.
That's
there.
why I've been checking my phone.
Yeah,
I've been checking my phone throughout this because I'm getting notifications and I keep reading to see if it's anything to
probably
do
all
with
Spurs with it.
It is.
And let's talk us through your team here. You've gone for Sales and goal, back four of Muniz, Van Dijk, Milinkovic, Savic, and Kerkez. Midfield three of Gravenberch, Rice, and Cunha, and I'm front three of Salah, Isak, and Mbuemo. So, I think some of them probably speak for themselves, but just talk us through the team in general.
I think Sales has just been. Ray has been good too, but for Sales, for me, he's just been. He's been outstanding, and if it wasn't for him, I think he has the most XG prevented out of any goalkeeper.
Yeah, joint number of clean sheets with Raya too.
Right. I know Mbuemo's left wing. I know he doesn't play there, but for me, I know you're saying about Rodgers, but for me, he's been unbelievable, and unfortunately I'm going to have to start disliking him by the sounds of things. But. And then Milinkovic for Van Dijk speaks for itself. Salah speaks for itself. Isak speaks for itself. Rice speaks for itself. I think Kerkez. It was between Kerkez and Robinson, but I went for Kerkez just because he's going to be signing for Liverpool. So no,
at least you're honest. At least you're honest.
I think he's been very good as well. And Munoz, I think his second half of the season has been brilliant. I think he's been. I was going to go for Aina eventually, but I think Munoz just edges it. And Milinkovic, I had to put a force player in there, an our force player in there because their back four has been great too. I was going to go for Gabriel, but he's been missing for the second half of the season as well, which swayed my decisions. But as I said about Gravenberch, Van Dijk, Rice, and Cunha as well, he's been amazing. But most of the team speaks for itself, really.
Yeah. Mine's is very similar, but there's a few differences. So I agree with you in the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Some players I put on here may be questionable, but I try to put on their impact and not just on the Premier League.
I think for me too. I think McAllister. I think for me too, McAllister just missed out.
Yeah, it was difficult for him, to be honest. And I think Gravenberch has had a bigger impact, and that's kind of where it's on. Probably some of these as well were not just Premier League related. And I'll explain them. So Sales and goal. The Porro, I think, for how difficult the season Spurs have had, I think he's played nearly every game.
Yes.
So, in the league and the cups in Europe, he's managed to stay fit. He had a lot of assists. I think he had the most goals from a right back in the league as well. He had a lot of assists, and he also scored in the quarterfinal and the semi-final of the Europa League. So that's why I put him on there. I couldn't really think of outstanding right backs. Obviously, Trent's been difficult for him, way everything that's been going on. Arsenal have been struggling with fullbacks all year. Man City, Walker's been that whole issue at right back for them has been tough. Matty Cash at Villa has been in and out, so there wasn't a lot of outstanding right backs in the league. So that's why I went for Porro. Van Dijk and Gabriel. Obviously, Van Dijk, spiritual leader of Liverpool, excellent season. I put Gabriel on because I also think as well the impact of when he lost them. I think Arsenal set pieces went the other way completely when Gabriel wasn't there. They were scoring from set pieces and then they were conceding them. Also, Saliba looked quite shaky at times without Gabriel.
Yeah.
Robinson had the most duels won as a fullback in the league, and he also had the most assists.
It was between him and
Robinson had to go on. I think Kerkez has a great season, but I think he had a great spell, whereas I think Robinson's been a lot more consistent.
Yeah.
Miles Lewis-Skelly, very unlucky to miss out, and I've actually included him somewhere else along, but I just had to put Robinson in for his overall season. We talk about impacts again. Gravenberch, there was a lot of questions about Arsenal's number 6 or Liverpool's number 6 position. Gravenberch answered them emphatically. Again, played nearly every game, and of course, it's going to be suspended for the first 3 games after a red card.
It's only one.
It's only one game. Rice, phenomenal. Again, consistency all season. What he did in the Champions League against Real Madrid was special, so I couldn't ignore that. That's why he was in there. Yeah. And he's also played in a lot of different positions as well. So
he plays as like a number 6 at times and a number 8 at times.
Yeah. You're playing Cunha as a 10. I've actually shifted Cunha to the left, but I put Rodgers on there again. Just think his impact at Villa has been outstanding. I think he's very close to pushing Bellingham for an England spot too. To be honest, I think he's been that good. His form's been that good. He's dribbling. His ability to take the ball under pressure.
You think I might get to the World Cup next year?
Oh, he'll definitely be in the squad, but
Yeah.
where he starts, I think he can only play him or Bellingham, and that'll be the issue. But
Yeah.
I think against PSG, Rogers was outstanding in that home leg, and he scored in the away leg. So again, some of these were based on our competitions. Mo Salah, running out of words to describe him. Fantastic season. Well, more record-breaking season, wasn't it? Just an outstanding footballer.
I think it was 50.
Probably the closest we've seen to Ronaldo in terms of dedication and commitment and looking after himself.
Ronaldo's a better player, but in terms of like physique and fitness and mentality, like, and
you know, maybe Salah's the same in 7 or 8 years' time. Maybe he'll be playing when he's close to 40. Cunha, I put in there again. I mean, I think without Cunha, Wolves go down. I think he was that important to the Wolves. I know he had a wee spell where he was missing and he done all right, but he lit the torch for them. And he's outstanding. And United fans will be very excited. I know you've Mbuemo in there, but I think that's two great signings for United. We'll come on to speak about that. And of course, Isak, I think hands down was the best striker in the league this season. And you know, lucky for Newcastle, I think they got into the Champions League, or there'd be a lot of clubs looking at him.
If Newcastle didn't get into the Champions League, I think he would be in a Arsenal or Liverpool shirt for me.
Yeah. Owen, player of the season, I think, was a very straightforward one. And that was Mo Salah for both of us. Very easy record breaking.
You can't really say much more, can you? He's just been phenomenal. Like, he dragged us over the line in certain games, like the Brighton game sticks out for me. There's been countless games this season. His assists, his goals, it's just, and I don't expect him to keep it up next season, but even if he drops down to a 20 goal a season player, if we have a striker, just think of the amount of assists he would have got if we had a striker who could finish.
If you're not a Liverpool fan as well, you're not going to like these last few awards. Young player of the season, we both agreed. No, we didn't actually. Sorry, we didn't. Yeah. You've gone with Gravenberch, haven't you?
Again, it was just his impact, and nobody, even me, expected how much he would improve and how much he would be important to the team. But it was between him and Miles Lewis-Skelly, and that's who you went for, obviously. So we just...
The only reason that Gravenberch is what age? 23, 24?
23. He's 20.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
I think next year he won't be able to win this award. And I think he changed the age of this award. I think it's what, 18, 19? And I think for his impact at Arsenal had a lot of injuries at fullback, and I think the way he came on, he was
he's not even...
He didn't have his best game away, but all or not, he was outstanding.
And to be fair, he's not even a fullback; he's a midfielder by trade.
And the way he was able to take the ball and tight situations and stuff, I think Arsenal have a really special player there. Pained when he said that, but
he's unreal.
Yeah, manager of the season, we both agreed in this one, and it was Arne Slot. What an impact, though. Nobody would have sat here last year this time and says Liverpool won the league.
Unless your name's Kieran Preston.
He'd say that every year, but...
Yeah, but no, it's just when we were sitting here in May 2024, Klopp left, new manager come on, no signings. Well, Kesa, but he didn't play. So I didn't think we would fall off a cliff like everyone else seemed to. I think I predicted us to finish third, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I was proven wrong in a good way, but it's just the impact he's had. Nobody could have expected, and the real test now starts next season for me, because we're gonna be targeted because we're the champions. Everyone's want to go and put a market down and beat us, and it looks like this summer we're really attacking the market. So it's gonna be an interesting season to see if we can retain our title.
Yeah, let's look at that. We're going to wrap it up with the transfers. And we'll start with Liverpool, Owen, because they've signed Frimpong for around £30 million. Kerkez looks to be moving closer at around £40 to £45 million. And of course, very, very close, it seems, to signing Florian Wirtz in a British record deal of around 120 million, which would take the spending to around 200 million.
FSGM, I've always said it.
Obviously, it's good that they're acting early on. Are you surprised that they're going quite big very early on here? They're probably shelling out close to £200 million on 3 players.
Well, I'm always because every year I always hear, this is the big summer for Liverpool. We're going to spend blah blah blah, and then we never seem to do. But this summer, I don't know what it is. Maybe the owners have maybe someone's hacked John Henry's bank bank details and just spent. But no, in all seriousness, I just think we've realised as we spoke about, you can't do this. Bring through academy and hope or sign players for 10 million and hope they turn into £100 million players. So it's good that we're getting it done early. And
I
I don't.
actually think as well, some of these Premier League clubs, the likes of Liverpool, Man City, and Arsenal, will be looking at the PSG team, looking at the Barcelona team, and thinking, you know what? At the minute, I don't think any of those three teams is near those two, just in terms of their actual individual ability. You think obviously Mo Salah, but you think of that whole PSG front three, the Barcelona team, the likes of Pedri and Yamal and all, they're rare talents. And you look at the likes of Vitinha, and we mentioned that game last night. A lot of those players play for Barcelona and PSG. Real Madrid are looking like they're going to be stronger next year. I think a lot has probably set a bit of panic into some of these teams, and that's why you're seeing maybe them going so early. And we haven't even mentioned it all about how good PSG were. We mentioned about the Spain and France game last night, but very similar in terms of that Spain and France team. And the way PSG play, the running ability and the trickery, the creativity.
That Champions League
really special players, some of them teams.
That Champions League final was just a massacre, wasn't it? And I was speaking to a friend, and I was saying, no way for the last 15, 20 years, it's been Messi and Ronaldo. Now it's going to be Douye and Yamal. It's going to be like Douye and...
And I think, obviously, Barcelona know where they have to strengthen. If they can get a couple of centre-halves on, I'm sure they're going to get stronger. They look set, possibly a striker as well. Real Madrid have brought Trent on. And they've got a lot of quality there. And PSG, I mean, what a team they have. So I think Liverpool will be looking at that and thinking, although we were the best in England this year, they probably realised they won the Champions League. They're going to have to improve.
But then again, like, yes, PSG battered us in the first leg, and probably the second we were penalty shootout away from knocking them out. So it just
I think it would have been a robbery, but of the two games, to be
honest. It would have been like, but it's fine margins. But and the mad thing is, I don't think we're done. I think we're gonna get a centre half. I think we'll go for an RDM to back up Gravenberch, because I think Endo will go, and obviously I think we'll get a striker. So
what I would say as well, and a lot of clubs they're at busy are kind of the clubs that are playing the Club World Cup. Of course, the window closes on Tuesday for that, and then reopens, I think, a week later.
Yeah.
Do you think? I mean, a lot of people were criticising this, but there's a lot of money involved in this Club World Cup, the prize fund. Do you think a lot of teams are going to take this seriously? I mean, Real Madrid have shelled out 10 million to get Trent on, for this.
Yeah.
So I mean, do you think this is going to be a very competitive competition?
Oh, I'll be watching it. Like, I'll be watching it. As I said, I'll be hit watching Real Madrid. So no, I'll be watching it because there'll be some interesting games. And as you say, Real Madrid got Trent out of his contract a month early for 10 million for a player that they would have got for nothing. So I'm happy with that. We got 10 million for him. So I think clubs will take it seriously, and you never know. Next season or whenever it's next on again. Is it every year?
No, it's going to be every 4 years.
Or just like the proper. So the next time it's on, like Liverpool could be on it, Spurs could be on it. You never know how it's going to be. But in terms of the big one for me is the Florian Wirtz deal, because when there was murmurings that he was leaving Leverkusen, everyone and their dog thought he's going to Bayern or he's going to go to Man City. But when it started to break out that he only wants to join Liverpool, I was like this is like the Bellingham summer all over again, but this time I'm not going to get hurt at the end of it.
Yeah. But the only one thing that might work in Spurs' favour for that Super Cup is if PSG go all the way in this Club World Cup, they're going to be knackered and they're going to need a break. How seriously will they take that game in August, before the season starts? Yeah. Of course, they'll only win it, but will they be feeling the effects of the Club World Cup? Because it's in America too. So it's going to be hot. It's going to be it's going to be difficult conditions.
It's in Italy, isn't it? The Super Cup final.
Yeah, I think it's 3 or 4 days before the Premier League starts. So 13th of August. So who knows? Maybe Spurs, maybe the Thomas Frank era gets off with a bang, but who knows? Well, we mentioned these two players quite a lot tonight, Cunha and Mbeumo. United, Cunha's done, and Mbeumo seems to be near and closer. I mean, there's about a 5 million difference in valuation. I mean, big wages United are shelling it to get these players on as well. But this is going to cost them roughly 120 million to get these two in. So all this talk that United have no money seems to have gone away.
Good. I'm not going to sit here and say because they're signing for United they're not good players. Very good signings. And I think
as the worry on that they've signed good players in the past though, and they've not really materialized. That we've seen them sign Sancho. We've seen them sign Casemiro. They're just some examples. Varane was a disaster.
Pogba.
Pogba, Anthony, never really lived up to the previous form they showed or the
I know
potential they were able to.
Maybe United is just a poison chalice for players, but
Bruno Fernandes is probably the only one I can think of that really went up the levels when he signed there.
I'm trying to think. No, maybe. No, you're probably right. I just haven't in recent times anyway. But I think these players suit Amram a lot more. But then again, if United have a bad start the next season and Amram goes, what happens then?
Also linked with Gyökeres, he's going to cost a bit of money as well. They shelling out 180 million on this front three. But do you think if a front three ends up being Mbeumo on the right, Cunha on the left, Gyökeres up front and Bruno on behind, all of a sudden United could be a different animal?
They're not.
All four of those players score goals. Cunha got 15 in the league. Mbeumo got 20. Gyökeres is breaking records all over Europe, and Fernandes always chips in with a fair amount.
If they get him, good signing, but I don't think it'll be enough to bridge the gap to Liverpool or City or anything, but or Arsenal. But for the
one thing that could work in their favour in a one-off season is that there's 6 teams in the Champions League who are going to have hard games, and you'd expect the likes of Liverpool, Man City, and Arsenal to go deep in it. Yeah. And United only have 1 game a week. What will that help them in terms of maybe they could have a really good season in the league?
Could do, but it could have an effect on them the other way too. So you've seen it with our teams too, where it just depends on how everything gels. But I'm not going to sit here and say because they're signed for United that they're bad players, because they're not. Like if Mbeumo or Cunha had a sign for Liverpool, I wouldn't have batted an eyelid, to be honest. The one thing that worries me about Cunha though is his attitude with the bless you with the rest of the. Because Fernandes is a bit of a wonder. I did get a chuckle the other night. Did you see Wirtz stumping on him?
Yeah.
I was like, come on, get on. And then he started Bernardo Silva. Then I was like, yes, he's in. Good signings.
Yeah, Man City, of course, busy in the market. They've agreed a deal for Reinders of around £47 million, and also looks like Turkey is going to be coming on as well.
Can't say I've seen much of Reinders, to be fair, so I'm not going to. He's very highly rated from what I've heard, but I've not watched a lot of him. Turkey, on the other hand, he looks a bargain. Apparently, Slot flew out to meet him before work.
What I would say, he's very physical and built, so I'd imagine he'll cope with the Premier League quite well, and he can play with both feet. He was very impressive when he came on against Spain last night.
That was his debut too.
The first time I've really seen him. I only watched bits of the Leon Man United tie. He obviously scored a couple of goals in those, but Spurs was kind of playing at the same time, so I didn't really watch most of it.
He's always been one of them players that's been linked with the likes of Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Spurs. Like he's always. But it looks like
if these players come in and they match what their hype is, Man City look a different animal in midfield with Reinders and Cherky and Rodri back.
They do, yeah. But again, if Liverpool get Wirtz as well, that adds a different dimension to our game. And if United get Cunha...
How much have you seen of Wirtz? Because you says you haven't seen much of Reinders here, so...
To be fair, I watched a lot of Leverkusen last year because I thought we were getting Xabi Alonso, so...
people think I've been better with this, but I was chatting I haven't seen enough of Wirtz to make an opinion of him. He's very highly rated, a bit like this Reinders fella, a bit like Cherky. I don't really get a chance to watch a lot of these games that teams are playing on, but I've seen Wirtz a few times, and I remember the Euros. He started really well. Scotland game, he was excellent. In Germany, started well. Kind of towards the latter ranges, he went missing. The Atalanta Leverkusen game, he was non-existent, and in that game, I battered him. And then he showed butts against Portugal the other night, but then second half, there was only one man that ran the game. It was Vitinha. So I think a lot of these players, you have to judge them when they come to England and see how they cope with the league.
It's like when you think about it, though. Yes. He's playing with Leverkusen and they have good players, but look at the players he's going to be playing with at Liverpool. Salah,
not always an exact science, but we've seen players.
I know example. But what I think will help him too is because he'll have Frank Pong there, so they have an understanding as well.
There's been quite a lot of players that's come from the German league recently with big reputations and not done it. And that would be the only worry. But what I would say is to counteract that, Liverpool have a really, really good reputation of bringing players in and working. So
the last time Liverpool brought a German was curious. So it can only get better. It can only improve from what he was.
Finally, on Arsenal are targeting Sesko as their main target for striker, and Rodrigo now merging reports that Arsenal are looking at him possibly somewhere in around the 80-90 million pound mark. Again, we know Real Madrid don't like losing players, but they will sell a player that they maybe don't feel is one of their best for the right price. We've seen them do that with Varane, with Casemiro, with Di Maria, with Ozil. They've done it in the past, and they've got big fees for these players. I'm wondering will Rodrigo be that one, because I'm sure they value Mbappe and Vinicius as vital to their project.
Yeah.
But I think Rodrigo will be a big must because he does work hard and he plays on he plays on the left, but he's happy to play on the right for Madrid because Mbappe and Vinicius like they drift out there.
Rodrigo's an hour player that, like, say if we had a lost Salah this summer, I would have went straight for Rodrigo.
Yeah, and Sesko, I mean, again, just like I mentioned there, again, I've only seen bits and pieces of him. He can hit a ball, he can score a goal, but I mean, if you delve on these stats, they're not overly impressive in terms of goals. But he is young and he could improve.
No, it's going to be interesting for him because Rodrigo can also play through the middle at times. So he's versatile, but it's a big season and obviously they're getting Zubimendi as well.
It's about that. There's very conflicting reports about that. There's people saying it's close. Our reports saying that Zubimendi's still thinking about it. He's not sure about moving to England.
We've heard that before. No, it's a big season for Arsenal and Arteta. If they don't want anything major, and I'm talking Premier League, Champions League, yes, they go.
Will be an interesting summer ahead. So many big deals they have, and I think it's going to be pretty busy up until Tuesday, of course, because the window closes then for about a week. But especially all these Club World Cup teams, they'll be trying to get their squads ready to go because I was reading there's about 100 million if you won this Club World Cup. So again, more money, more ammunition for teams to go and buy players. And it is a trophy, and it's the first kind of edition of this maximised Club World Cup.
Yeah.
So I mean, if PSG meet Real Madrid in the final, or Man City meet Real Madrid in the final, or PSG, they're all going to want to win it.
No, they are.
They are. Owen, it's been absolutely brilliant to do the podcast tonight. Of course, we had so much to talk about, so many big stories. It's been a brilliant season. I want to thank you for your impact on the podcast this season. It's not going to be much of a long break now because we're going to be back in Wednesday week with the fixtures when they come out. Probably not be as busy.
Liverpool have Burnley away first day of the season.
We'll probably not be as busy in the first few weeks in June in terms of there won't be as much to talk about. But maybe towards the end of July and when the season's starting to come back again, we'll be getting back updated again. But Owen, thanks very much. If you're new around here, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content. Of course, the 2025-26 season seems like an age away, but honestly, once the fixtures come out now and the Club World Cup starts and that finishes, it'll feel like a few weeks away.
Generally, I'm not even saying this. It feels like 5 minutes ago we were all here doing the fixtures for last season.
I know. That's how seasons go, isn't it? Yeah. But Owen, I know it's your birthday next week. Happy birthday, lad. All right. Enjoy.
Same to you as well.
Yeah. Funny enough, it's Tuesday when that Club World Cup window shuts. And I think the Club World Cup starts next weekend then, is it?
Starts on my birthday.
Yeah. So is that next Friday?
Saturday.
Next Saturday. Yeah. PSG's playing Atletico Madrid right now. I think it might be the second game.
I think it is. It's on. I think it's on BBC, isn't it? They're showing it.
Yeah, free to air, so that'll be good for people to. That's it. If it's on free to air, people watch it. That maybe don't have Sky or whatever. But Owen, thanks very much again, and I'll see you very soon, sir.
No bar, lad. Cheers.